Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Sabrina Oktavelia. In an increasingly digital world, protecting ourselves online is more important than ever. And in this episode, we will provide practical tips and strategies for individuals to enhance their personal cybersecurity to stay safe online. Today, we're accompanied by Dr. Zhongtian Li, who is a senior lecturer in the University of Newcastle, whose papers have been published in well-respected journals like Accounting, Auditing, and Accountability Journal, and Accounting Research Journal. And Dr. Zhongtian and I will cover topics like password hygiene, social media safety, protecting against phishing scams, and securing your devices. By enhancing personal cybersecurity, we'll stay resilient in the evolving cybersecurity practices. Dr. Zhongtian Li, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to show up here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you and happy Chinese New Year. Gong Xi Fa Cai, everyone who's celebrating as well.
Thanks a lot.
And
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Before we begin, can you give us a little overview as to the various types of cybersecurity threats we see online these days?
Yeah. So all right. I think let's begin by discussing some common threats for individuals. So like phishing and other scams. So usually you got fraudulent messages, sometimes in emails, designed to steal personal information like passwords or credit card details. So for example, you may receive a short message from your manager requesting that you share your work account passwords with her or him. And that's kind of quite common or typical. The second we call malware actually will be viruses. So malware, in fact, personal devices like smartphones, I believe. Often we download or email links or compromise weirdo websites. Credential stuffing. So for example, using stolen username and password pairs from, say, your work email account to try to access your personal email account. So that's kind of common three threats. There are also we call less common threats here. So one we call man in the middle attacks. So for example, some hackers would like to intercept unsecured communications on public Wi-Fi to steal information or to inject malware. And we also run into many we call data breaches. So those breaches have occurred actually in several quite important service providers in Australia, for example, like Medibank or Optus, which is our mobile service provider here. But for businesses, so like online stores, small restaurants, shops, our interviews with practitioners indicate that some of them actually have encountered what we call ransomware. So in this scenario, will be a hacker shows up and encrypts the organizational files and like other data, and the hacker will demand, say, payment for decryption. So I would like to usually suggest that individuals may also actually experience or encounter this ransomware. And for organizations or businesses, some of them also run into what we call denials of service or distributed denial of service attacks. So usually these attacks flood a network or service with excessive traffic or requests, so making actually the website of the service actually unavailable to users. So, for example, in Australia, the Department of Home Affairs actually experienced this kind of attack in 2023, so just about 2 years ago, I believe. So anyway,
Wow.
overall, so for individuals, usually we got phishing, other kind of schemes, malware, and credential stuffing. Um, but given we actually got many data breaches in Australia, another example will be a financial service provider they call Latitude. I think in 2023,
Latitude.
about 2 years ago, I think. I mean, as kind of individuals, we need to really better manage or understand the repercussions of such breaches. But for organizations or businesses, usually ransomware and distributed denial of services attacks kind of are more common.
I see.
Mm.
So there's actually plenty of cybersecurity threats that we have around, and there's a new one called is Latitude back in 2023.
Yes, it's a financial service provider in Australia. Usually, they offer things like pay
Mm-hmm.
pay after you go. So those
Mm-hmm.
kind of like mortgage services to customers to everyone, and they experienced this breach in 2023. I think many personal information like driver license, home address, credit card details actually were unfortunately leaked or released.
Ah, I see. So
Mm,
they got an attack. So the personal data of the customers are leaked outside. So that is
yeah.
indeed quite dangerous, and that's horrible. Because personally, we should take care of ourselves, especially in terms of scams and phishing.
Mm,
And that's really fascinating, especially when you talked about ransomware and the industrial parts where there are bigger threats out there. And I'd love to dive further into this discussion with you. But
yeah.
before we do that, we'd love for our listeners to get to know you a bit better. So
Yeah.
here's a segment we call Have You Met Zhongtian? Okay, so what is your favorite book?
Okay, so I guess my favorite book will be Kafka's The Castle. So it's kind of a very short story. So there is a person they call K, arrives in a small village, and the K, this person, struggles to get access to the authorities who
Mhm.
somehow control and govern the village from the castle. But eventually the K failed. So that's kind of the story. And I think this story is quite interesting in a sense that readers can actually approach the story from various aspects.
Ah, that's really great. And what movie have you enjoyed recently?
Well, I probably will go for the Avengers and the game. So that one,
Oh,
I
Endgame.
think, yeah, I think, but I knew that that movie, I think, was released a couple of years ago. But
Ah,
given that,
2019.
yes, but given that my kid is still quite young, so I actually spend most of my available time with him. So instead of got chance to go cover the movies or things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Endgame is really great, especially when you're a Marvel fan who has followed since Iron Man. Yeah. And are you listening to any podcasts at the moment?
Well, actually, I really try to love, you know, I really love to try, more different kind of podcasts if I have time. But as I mentioned, since my kid is still, I would say, too small or too young, so we spend most of my available time taking care of him, doing all the day-to-day kind of family tasks for him. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and next, do you have a role model?
Well, yes. In fact, I think more than one role model. For instance, I would say as an academic or as an employee for a university, my role model actually is Professor Ali Chappell. So Professor Chappell is my PhD supervisor, and she really
Mhm.
exemplifies how an exceptional academic interacts with, say, students, colleagues, and
Mm.
courses. So yeah.
Oh, so he's actually someone who you look up to in terms of a teacher.
Yeah, because given my current kind of employment positions, like 50% of my time actually
Mhm.
is used or allocated for teaching activities. So I think, yeah, I really need to have a excellent role model there.
That's wonderful. So you can become a wonderful teacher to your students as well.
Yeah. I really love to provide, I think, a good learning experience to my students. Yeah.
Wow. And is there a course that has inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, as kind of a academic or university employee in Australia, so I really
Uh-huh.
had actually the privilege of
Mhm.
attending many different courses, in offered at different institutes or universities. But however, I think one course that truly stood out and
Mhm.
had I would say, a profound impact on me was the corporate social responsibility course
Mm.
I took during my undergraduate studies. I think it should be year three. So year three. And this course was delivered by Janet Li at the Australian National University. I think at this stage, Dr. Janet Lee actually retired. I think so. And this course actually communicates or presents the different ways in which actually businesses can
Mhm.
contribute to the well-being of our communities and other stakeholders like employees, customers. So the course really actually broadened my perspective and encouraged me to consider, I would say, diverse but socially meaningful roles that businesses and commerce students actually can pursue.
Ah, I see. So corporate social governance. So do you actually apply that in your teachings as well?
Yes, because in this kind of more, I would say, traditional perspectives,
Mhm.
usually we think accounting courses are fairly technical. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
courses are fairly kind of limit. The
Rigid.
content is yes, it's rigid and it's actually regulated to some extent. But things I kind of delivered the course in the last couple of years. I mean, accounting courses. So I really would like to actually communicate, say, accountants actually can contribute to the communities, contribute to non-financial stakeholders in different ways by leveraging their accounting knowledge and skills.
I see. And how does accountancy connect with cybersecurity?
That's actually the interesting question. So, at the very beginning,
Hmm.
at the very beginning, my thought or initial response is the two actually were not connected at all.
Yeah.
But after interviewing, I think we pretty much interviewing about 20 practitioners, including senior executives, cybersecurity experts, along with accountants.
Hmm.
We generally have kind of this impression is accountants actually have a quite important responsibility here in relation to cybersecurity because accountants actually access to many secrets like
Ah, yeah,
employees
yeah.
information, their payroll, a business's cash account,
Mm.
when they pay the suppliers. So given that accountants actually access those many secrets there, we're saying that accountants really need to scale up and to better prepare for this cybersecurity overall different cybersecurity measures or different cybersecurity aims.
I see. So accountants are actually one of the key stakeholders that brings and has the secrets of the companies and how to improve that company in the future and how to scale up.
Yes, because given this access, and actually many accountants also, to some extent, actually have what we call managerial roles.
Hmm.
So for example, the some accountants, given their experience or their senior positions, they actually gonna allocate who can access which part of the financial records or who can access or what kind of different combinations of secrets there. So they really need to have we think some sort of at least a basic knowledge about cybersecurity, about system access, so to make sure that they actually can run and maintain the financial systems adequately.
I see. So they actually are there to find the balance and find what is good and what is correlated to each other and how to improve the cybersecurity of the company that they have. And according to you, Zhongtian, what is cybersecurity and why is it important in today's digital world?
Yeah, so generally speaking, cybersecurity refers to the prefix of protecting systems, networks, and data from attacks, unauthorized access, and other damage. So the primary aim of cybersecurity is to safeguard the privacy and assets, including digital assets of individuals and businesses. So again, today's digital world actually is very important to us, including our business owners, and
Yes.
it affects I think nearly every aspect of our personal and professional lives. So, for example, many
Ah,
of us pay, say, personal tax online these days, right? And in Australia, usually taxpayers gonna pay their personal tax through the website called MyGov. And we also do, frequently use online banking services, and
I see.
businesses actually also we call the term digitalize many of their activities. So, for example, they usually call these specialized websites for online shopping.
Mhm.
So, given all of this, cybersecurity is quite important. In addition, is cyber attacks and other we call illegitimate kind of behavior, like unauthorized access, actually are quite frequent in Australia at least. So, for example, the annual cyber threat report for
Oh,
2023 2024 revels that the Australian cybersecurity hotline receives an average about 100 calls per day,
mm,
and the report
100.
yes, and the report also highlights the average self-reported cost of cybercrime per report for individuals, small businesses, and the medium businesses as about 30,000 Australian dollar, 49,000 Australian dollar, and up to 62,000 Australian dollar, respectively. So that cost
Mm,
actually can be huge. Thus, our thing is without very effective or robust cybersecurity measures, I believe, so the individuals and the businesses actually face kind of high risks here, like financial loss for businesses who get reputation damage and other things like operational disruption.
mm. So there's actually a lot of aspects that cybersecurity plays, especially in terms of banking and finances and our our financial situations. And it is quite dangerous if these information falls into the wrong hand. And how has the definition and scope of cybersecurity evolved over the year?
Yeah, so I think we can start with we call earlier days. So
Mhm.
in 1970s and 80s, cybersecurity was at that time primarily actually focused on safeguarding standalone computer systems against some very basic threats like malware or viruses.
Mhm.
And at that time, only a small number of people actually use computers. So this idea of cybersecurity actually was not a big or serious concern for average person.
Yes.
Yes, but later, since we got the internet in 1990s, we actually got these significant changes here. So as computers become, quite interconnected, new
Mhm.
vulnerabilities actually emerged, and the hackers began to exploiting these connections. So people again began to face what we call real-world issues like email phishing and
Yes.
other kind of digital scams and computer viruses or malware. So making cybersecurity more kind of relevant to everyday life. During this period, I think terms like firewalls And antivirus softwares became, I would think, part of that cybersecurity vocabulary. The focus also
Indeed.
later expanded from what we call standalone computer systems to networks, really emphasizing the tools and the practices to block unauthorized access and detect malware. Again, as the internet became quite important these days, so we actually got this I would say a really booming of e-commerce, different types of communication and entertainment. So cybersecurity challenges is, I would say, really actually multiple. So people need to actually protect their personal information, passwords to avoid identity safety, different kinds of online frauds. Again, for business, they got the opportunities for e-commerce, online shopping platforms, and other online services here. But again, those services actually introduce the need to protect very sensitive customer information, right? Such as customers'
Mm.
credit card numbers and their could be their shipping address, for example.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, in the I would say 2010s, pretty much marked the age of the smartphones and other we call Internet of Things device. So for example,
IoTs.
we got smart doorbells and voice assistants. But unfortunately, those everyday devices like smart doorbells or voice assistants actually became potential targets for hackers later. So I guess
Mm.
even usually daily users began to realize the importance of securing not just their computers like laptops or desktops, but also their home networks and their mobile devices. We also got this kind of the rapid, really, the adoption of cloud computing, right? Especially given the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so given that we actually got more remote work from home, so these cloud-based applications actually becoming quite normal. And the focus has shifted to protecting, say, organizational files or data stored in distributed computer systems and ensuring secure access from everywhere in the world. Nowadays, I think everyone is more likely to encounter, I would say, various threats as we discussed previously, like phishing emails. And but luckily, I would say these days we have more kind of cybersecurity tools like we call multi-factor authentication or two-factor or authentication. And
Yeah.
so I think cybersecurity has become, I would say, essential in today's digital world. So yeah, and I think given over time, I kind of believe that the scope of this cybersecurity has broadened significantly, I would say.
I see. So I do believe that it has broadened significantly as well as you mentioned, there are things that are in our house, the Internet of Things that has become available online, available in the cloud, and the high usage of the cloud where we put our files there, where we put our important files online as well. So the understanding of the threats of these cybersecurity issues are imminent nowadays. And how can we build personal resilience with evolving cybersecurity practices?
Yeah, so let's start with personal resilience. So personal resilience in cybersecurity, in that specific dimension, I
Mhm.
would say it refers to the ability of individuals to really adapt uh, and protect themselves and recover quickly from cybersecurity threats and incidents if those incidents unfortunately occur. In other words, we believe that individuals are expected to properly handle the threats and the incidents when those incidents or threats occur and learn from the experience to actually improve or strengthen their future security. And back to our interviews on those practitioners, including cybersecurity experts, we actually got some pretty good, I would say, suggestions from them. So the first thing will be staying informed. So really, as kind of individuals, we need to keep up with the the emerging threats, new kind of schemes, and the trends in cybersecurity through some trusted news resources, for example, workshops, short training modules. If workshops and the short training modules are offered by, say, your employees, and awareness campaigns. So, for example, in Australia, they got a specific government website which they call cyber.gov.au. So that website offers many, I would say, quite high quality, trustworthy tips and information for cybersecurity. Second, I would say got these multiple lines of security. So like use a combination of tools like antivirus software packages, built-in firewalls, password managers, and this we call two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Third really is this backup. So regularly back up important files and data to secure locations. Like could be a cloud storage, maybe say Dropbox or Google Drive, or external drives. Last bit is have some this we call good day-to-day practices like setting up a strong unique password, those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about 2FA, and can you tell me a little bit more on what is 2FA or two-factor authentication and how does it help in defending ourselves online?
Yeah, so usually we can call it a two-factor authentication, or sometimes they actually became we call multi-factor authentication. But anyway, so they are kind of a security measure used to verify a user's identity. So when we would like to log into an account, so it requires the users to provide at least two kind of different types of credentials. So the first one will be something we know, could be our password, something we have. So could be usually will be a physical device such as our smartphone, or a one-time what they call passcode, usually sent to your the short message or email inbox. And these days, things given the really would say a new technology for that smart phone or smart mobile, we actually can say offer a facial recognition or a fingerprint. So it's kind of like requiring the two separate factors. So it could be a password plus a one-time passcode, or a password plus say a facial recognition. So this two-factor or multi-factor authentication significantly reduces the likelihood of what we call unauthorized access. Even if, let's say, a hacker somehow opens one of the factors. So, for example, passwords from data breaches. So even if, let's say, a attacker acquires your password, they won't still be able to access your account without the second or the third factors. So could be this one-time passcode, or will be a fingerprint or facial recognition.
I see. It's like having two doors, like having a gate and a door so that people don't easily get into your personal data. I see.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, we did a little bit on cloud storage. We did mention a bit about cloud storage. And what role does cloud storage, like Drive or iCloud, play in modern cybersecurity strategies?
Yeah, so cloud storage platforms like in the wild, I think we are pretty much familiar with, like Google Drive, iCloud from Apple, or Dropbox.
Yeah.
I think they are the go-to for storing files and data these days. So for example, I use Dropbox every day, and I knew that some of my university colleagues, they actually use Google Drive quite frequently.
Yeah.
And again, as long as you have, say, an iPhone or a MacBook, you're actually going to have an iCloud account. So anyway, these platforms, I think, offer quite secure and accessible solutions for data management. Again, in relation to data availability, I think these platforms allows you to back up and visit files and data almost anywhere and anytime, pretty much from any device as long as you have internet access. So this really actually supports the idea we call regular backups. So in case of, say we have a ransomware, as we discussed mentioned, in case we have a
Yeah.
ransomware attacks, or somehow you lost your laptop on a bus or a hardware failure, you can still retrieve your files and data from those platforms, like Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, or other platforms. And in addition, you actually kind of like are better protected from physical theft, just in case. And usually, those cloud storage platforms, they actually got pretty multiple, very strong security measures. So, such as end-to-end encryption. So overall, I think they offer a pretty accessible solutions for everyone. Yes.
Hmm. I see. So mostly accessibility. And how do advancements in technology other than cloud, for example, like the Web3 technology development, like AI development and decentralization, introduce new cybersecurity challenges?
Mm. I think it seems like, I mean, apparently we can use generative AI like ChatGPT to improve our work, kind of like, our writing, for example. But, hackers or attackers, they can also use it too. So, for example,
Mm.
uh, hackers actually can leverage, say, ChatGPT to craft highly personalized phishing emails, with very few spelling errors or grammar mistakes, and that emails closely kind of mimic legitimate communications. This actually can make these phishing emails more convincing and increasing the likelihood of successful deception. Another story, I guess, back to the blockchain. I think it really worthy of mentioning. So blockchain applications such as Bitcoin, quite famous one,
Mm-hmm.
actually are not that safe. So first thing first, blockchain actually they rely on we call smart contracts. So smart contracts pretty much are self executing programs stored on a blockchain, so that smart contract can automatically enforce agreements or transactions when predefined conditions are met. So they are actually widely used in different kind of blockchain applications to ensure that the users or the owners of blockchain applications can lend, receive, and trade. But however, their codes, I mean, the codes for smart contracts can be quite problematic sometimes. So, for example, some smart contracts actually are written with excessive privileges for certain users or administrators, so making them quite susceptible to misuse or hacking. And second, I guess as the blockchain applications they call decentralized, so
Mm-hmm.
actually there is no centralized control, making the coordination of we call cybersecurity measures quite complex. You actually don't have an organizer there, so it really depends on users here. And again, additionally, once data or assets are compromised in a decentralized scenario like blockchain applications, recovery actually can be almost impossible.
I see. Especially in decentralization, there's no buddy that we can talk to or like a customer service that we can find to recover these data.
Yes, and
Ah.
and, and I guess more importantly is since it is decentralized scenario, so there's no one actually is responsible for managing that. So that's also can be quite tricky.
I see. So it is
Mm.
actually quite an interesting scenario that only recently surfaced this past decade, right?
Yeah.
And as cybercrime is constantly evolving, including what you've mentioned earlier, phishing, malwares, ransomware, what are the most surprising attacks criminals are using today?
Okay. So I think okay. So I guess the first thing I would say go for is a new software package they call deepfake. So deepfake is a quite new technology. So this technology enables users to create quite realistic fake video clips or voice messages or voice recordings. So, for example, someone actually can create a video clip by borrowing, say, Morgan Freeman's voice. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, I guess hackers actually can use deepfake, audio of, say, managers or suppliers to trick, say, accountants into transferring cash to a fraudulent account, for example. Second, they call third-party attacks. So that means instead of targeting a company directly, hackers actually can compromise third-party vendors or software providers to the company. Then they can attack the company under the cover of this vendor or software provider. Last bit will be Internet of Things devices, really, as we discussed. So because we actually use more and more those kind of we call smart devices,
Indeed.
like security cameras, doorbells. So hackers actually can exploit poorly secured Internet of Things devices to control these devices. Then the hackers can remotely manipulate these devices to perform coordinated attacks, like the one we mentioned, distributed denial of services attacks, or other illegal or illegitimate activities without the owner's knowledge. So yeah, I probably would say, in my opinion, there will be deepfake technology, quite interesting, also quite dangerous. Second one we call third-party attacks, and last bit will be these poorly secured smart devices these days.
Poorly secured smart devices. And in an age of increasing data breaches, how can individuals reclaim control of their digital presence?
Yeah, so what to do to reclaim the control?
Yeah.
Our interviewees actually suggest, I would say, few kind of practical and good options. So first thing is really be aware of unusual account activities. So like unauthorized logins or some unexpected changes. Although the changes may be minor or quite small. In addition, we can actually disconnect compromised devices, for example, say smartphone, from the internet to actually prevent further damage if we somehow realize there could be something wrong. Update the passwords as soon as possible and remove unauthorized device or apps connected to your, say, work account if you can. Again, personally, or if we talk about individuals, usually those attacks really focus on, say, credit card, right, our bank
Yeah.
accounts. So I guess we need to call the bank to report suspicious transactions and freeze our account if necessary. So yeah, but again, if this is our, say, work account, we better notify the technology or security teams as soon as possible.
Okay, so you did mention a little bit about how we can talk to the IT team, especially in terms of our work emails or our bank services when people are breaching into our personal data. And can you share a story or any interesting story of someone who fell victim into cybercrime and how they rebuilt their digital resilience?
Yeah. So first thing first, since what we interviewed about about 20 practitioners, and retrospectively, I realized that people tend to um, avoid sharing their failures to some extent. They rather sharing the stories of success. But anyway, one of our interviews actually is quite I would say honest. Shared a story that actually happened several years ago. So the interviewee at that time was a accountant, and the interviewee received an email from a supplier. So this supplier actually has a quite long lasting business relationship. So
I see.
the supplier was quite kind of familiar, trustworthy. And typically, suppliers gonna attach, say, invoice or other documents to their emails, right? So open that, checking the transaction, or good type. The interviewee clicked on the attachment and discovered that their desktop actually had been hacked and later locked by ransomware. And again, in retrospect, we probably say, oh, that email turned out to be fake. But anyway, so the company eventually refused to pay the attack. And it took several days for the cybersecurity team to restore the backup data and bring the system back to normal. Uh, but luckily, there's no kind of further repercussion or consequences for our interviewee. But anyway, I guess the story really serves as a reminder of the importance of really following, some good cybersecurity practices, particularly, that regular backups.
Regular backups is really important, especially when you have a lot of important data that needs to be offline or data that are regularly looked up to.
Yeah.
Indeed. And what are, like in these cases, right, what are self-defense measures that we can do to stay safe online?
Okay, so I guess also based on our, I would say, our kind of interview findings here. So a couple of suggestions we received from practitioners. First thing first, think about, strong passwords. So we need to use unique, complex passwords for each account, like your work email account and personal email account, for example. Second point will be really regular backups. So keep backups of important data in multiple locations. Use two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication where possible. So you actually get an extra line of security. Software updates. So this one is suggested by one of our interviewed cybersecurity experts. So just regularly updating operating systems or software packages to actually reduce that vulnerability. Be cautious of suspicious, short message, web pages, links, emails, and email attachments. So, for example, again, this suggestion is offered by one of our senior executives. So, usually say if you receive a message or email, say from your supplier, to ask you to update their bank account details. That can be quite common. The suppliers say we close one bank account, we open another one. But the procedure is we need to directly contact the supplier, just call them to verify the message and the email. So make sure that the email actually was not fake. Last bit is use VPNs if you have on public Wi-Fi. And when you visit websites, make sure that the website is kind of like a HTTPS secured and look legitimate, not those fake problematic websites.
I see. That's quite interesting because I don't think a lot of people understand the dangers of public Wi-Fi's and how actually other people can access our information and passwords through those public Wi-Fi's. That's why VPNs are quite important in this matter. And how does cybercrime impact mental health, and what steps can individuals take to recover emotionally after they receive an attack?
Yeah, so I guess back to I'm currently staying. So in Australia, they actually got many different kind of schemes. Could be emails, could be short message, sometimes even phone calls to the taxpayers during the tax season. And try to say, we are, the Australian Taxation Office. Please provide us your bank account details because there's something problems in your personal tax documents.
Mhm.
So, and one of our interviewees really shared a story that some of his clients actually unfortunately fall into this kind of schemes. So I guess back to the story for the mental health. First, I guess will be stress and really lots of anxiety given the potential financial loss. Second, could be loss of trust. So, for example, in our story for that, very honest interviewee, the company may actually have less trust interviewee after what happened. Third, could be a shame because usually individuals may feel ashamed for falling victim. But in terms of recovery, I think the first thing first, we can consult a mental health professional if necessary. In addition, I guess we need to acknowledge that really falling victim, especially given all these different kind of cybersecurity or cyber attacks scenarios, is actually not our fault. So we can share our experience with trusted friends,
Mhm.
family, or support group. This also helps reduce the feelings of isolation.
I see. So we actually need to talk it out, especially after an attack, because a lot of people are actually quite ashamed because, oh my God, why did I click on that email? And
Yes.
yeah, that's why communication is quite important to handling our emotional side. And
Yeah.
what's one overlooked aspect of digital self-defense that could make a big difference in staying safe online?
Yeah, I think many people these days overlook the permissions. They actually grant to applications, say on their computers
Mhm.
or mobiles. Usually we just tick all the box, yes, 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 next page,
Yeah,
yes, 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 and gone, right? That's it. I think
indeed.
some, yeah, and I think some applications, not all of them, but some applications, I think they often request access to, say, contacts,
Yeah.
locations, photos, files. Actually, they don't truly need to operate. So I guess kind of a suggestion is we may go through, all the application softwares, maybe on your desktop or maybe on your mobile, and revoke those, unnecessary permissions if you have
Mm,
time.
yeah. I think we all have the time to go through our apps and revoke permissions because it's something that is quite often overlooked because when we download an app, we just say, yes, 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 allow, 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 with every single thing that we have. And it
Yeah.
is quite often overlooked. And
Mm.
then, are there any cybersecurity myths that you often hear and wish to debunk?
Yeah, I think I probably just mentioned two, quite
Hmm.
common one. The first
Yeah.
one is I'm not important enough to be hacked, and I
Yeah.
guess in reality we got criminals or hackers pretty much target everyone, and more importantly, I think many attacks like phishing emails or ransomware they are automated, so they are automatically sent or delivered. So that's I guess the first one. Second one is back to our discussion for the mental health. I think
Mhm.
that's the only stupid people fall for schemes. A reality is, I think hackers these days they can target all groups using some specific strategies. So, for example, for seniors, as I mentioned, for many of our taxpayers in
Mm.
Australia, usually they will give you they call tax scams. Usually give you phishing email, short message, or even phone calls. But also for the younger users, usually they can do like phishing on gaming platforms, especially many we
Oh,
call web page games. So they
that's
they
true.
actually created for younger users. So pretty much everyone has I would say a fair chance to be over.
Yeah, to be randomly hacked because we don't know what we would click because sometimes we often think it's just something
Yeah.
that comes in like an email or a phone call or a text message, but it actually is all over the internet as well. And we can actually click onto those phishing links or scam links accidentally, and we would not know that because we're just thinking of, oh, we're just playing a game. Oh, I'm not that important. I
Yeah,
see.
or sometimes, as our interviewees mentioned, because they, for accountants or I think many professionals, they have peak season and off seasons. So usually for off seasons, they kind of more time or energy to consider different things or scenarios. But in really peak seasons, they got really high workload. They just rush through. They want to get it done quickly before the
Yeah,
due date, before the 5 p.m. today. So they were just processing them really quickly. So in that scenario, actually could be more quite vulnerable, I guess,
I
to those
see.
phishing schemes.
From what I noticed in our conversation just now, it's mostly on not rushing things and just reading things thoroughly,
Yeah,
especially in getting new emails or downloading apps, getting attachments, just checking our and doing our due diligence in terms of our hygiene, our cyber
yeah.
hygiene. And let's get into our practices and habits. I'd like to ask, what are three simple but effective habits that everyone should adopt to strengthen their online security?
I think pretty much, I guess would be three. I probably would propose three. So the first thing is really think before you click. So always verify, the sender's identity
Hmm.
before collecting email links or email attachments. Second one would be regular backups, especially if
Hmm.
kind of work for an organization. So really it's important. So if an incident somehow unfortunately occurred, uh, at least I guess backups can effectively reduce the loss and support the IT or security team to recover. Last bit is the thing we mentioned is use that multi-factor or two-factor authentication. So giving yourself a additional line of security or additional line of authentication actually can significantly reduce, that's unauthorized access, boost your account security. Yeah.
Which one out of these three habits do you think is the best habit that people should take? Like the key takeaway from these three habits, which one should?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess just back to personally or back to my own. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I kind of frequently use as we call multi-factor or two-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think these days, for universities and many public organizations like hospitals, city councils, employees have to set up two-factor or multi-factor authentication.
Yes.
So it actually really provides this extra line of security. So ensure that even if passwords are compromised, so attackers or hackers can still not access my account without
Mm-hmm.
this second factor authentication. Yeah.
I see. So when initially putting up two-factor authentication, what did you personally encounter difficult or challenging in up in applying this method, in applying 2FA to your devices?
Well, I think this kind of really a great advantage of this. I think this multi-factor or two-factor authentication is
Mm-hmm.
it's really easy to use. But I think it's kind of should be quite easy and accessible to users of kind of different technical skills or levels. So it should be fine. And since those, I guess especially these days because we got like Microsoft Authenticator as an application on the mobile phone or
Mm-hmm.
on the mobile or Google Authenticator. So
Yeah,
overall, that
authenticators.
tool, yes, is quite well integrated into the login process. So it actually doesn't require, much extra time outside of my normal, say, login routine.
I
So yeah, I
see.
think it should be fine. Yeah.
I see. Because usually an extra step takes a long time for a lot of people, but nowadays it's much more integrated with Google Authenticator and other technologies that are out there to support 2FAs.
Yes, and especially given we can use fingerprint or facial recognition these days, I think it should be okay.
Especially our devices as well is much more advanced as we have biometrics. Biometrics available like fingerprints and facial recognition.
Yes.
Thank you for your answer for the practices and habits. And now it's time for us to go into the next section, which is open mic, where you have the chance to talk about anything that you are passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. The stage is yours, Zhongtian.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. So first thing first, I really appreciate for having me here today. And I would like to actually express my gratitude to the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, so CAMA, for their financial support, as we discussed previously. So without their financial research grant, my colleagues and I would not have been able to explore this field of cybersecurity and accountants or cybersecurity and accounting. Nor would we have had the opportunity to publish two conversation articles. Second, I would like to really appreciate our interviewees for their, dedicating hours of their, very valuable personal time to answering our interview questions. But however, since they are anonymous, following our confidentiality in our interviews, so I'm not able to provide names here. but overall, I truly, sincerely appreciate our interviewees' efforts and time. Last bit is I would like to express my appreciation to my colleagues, courses, including Dr. Jing Jia, Dr. Karen Handley, Professor Christina Voigtker, and Dr. Imala Ness from Massey University in New Zealand. So this is really a team effort, a teamwork. So yeah, that'll be all. Thanks a lot.
Wow. So you're using your open mic time where you can talk about anything to give appreciation to your colleagues and your interviewees and your research
because we actually really took us, I think, about 10 months. Connecting or recruiting interviewees, arranging different times, because many of our interviewees, they actually be quite busy and they are located in different parts in Australia.
Of the world, yeah.
Yeah. And since 10 months, so some of our interviewees actually attended our interviews in their peak season. So they show up, say, I'm happy to attend interviews, but could we arrange this at 8 p.m. Friday? So so I think that's why I would say I really, really appreciate our interviews' efforts and time, along with my colleagues' support.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. Especially when they're giving you their time when they're supposed to be resting at 8 p.m. And
Friday.
If our listeners, and Friday as well. If our listeners want to find out more about you, Zhongtian, where should they go? Can you tell me? Can you tell them?
Yeah, not a problem. So I think our listeners may Google or search my full name, and they can find my university webpage at the University of Newcastle, Australia, because I knew that we have Newcastle University in the United Kingdom. So someone got too confused. And with my name and contact information, they actually can identify that on the university webpage.
I see. Thank you very much for your time, Zhongtian. That is it for today's episode, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you, everyone.
You have been listening to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website, pr.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.